Well, hello everyone. We're glad that you're joining us here today for our Friday, once again, our Friday installment for Around the Table in this first Friday here in April as we continue to stay at home and stay safe. But we're bringing this Around the Table to you from our homes. This week, what we wanted to talk about is how we're staying connected and how we're staying connected through our faith in these difficult times that we're in right now too, and what are some of the things that we can go to. And so the three of us are here today to talk about how we stay connected through music and how that has not only influenced our faith and helped us to stay connected and stay grounded going forward. So one of the things that I've been a part of in major formation in my faith in the church has been through the music programs. You know, I was one of those people that grew up in the church. I was in the kids choir. We called it the Asbury Choir. We had these ugly gold robes that we used to wear on Sunday morning whenever we sang. And I just worked my way on up through the ranks. We had youth musicals that we would do at the church. I got really into singing there in the youth choir and the like, and I've always been a musical person. But it was also the influence of a lot of different music, both Christian and secular, that have helped me to find a way to stay connected and stay grounded in everything that's been going on in my faith development here. And so one of the things that I think is important is just taking a step back and letting the notes, letting the music speak to me. And a couple of artists that were really influential to that, well, I think probably the first one, okay, I've got a strange confession. I am a hard rock and metal guy. So I had a Striper thing going on. If you don't know who that was, as Allie's looking at me like, what the heck are you talking about? They were a Christian metal band back in the late 1980s and early 1990s. But that's how I kind of first got into the Christian music scene, seeing that this stuff could actually be cool and play the kind of music that I like. But then that led me into a lot of the other genres. And there's three artists that really have influenced me going forward. And the first one, one could call him the godfather of it now, is Rich Mullins. Rich Mullins' music that really, for me, goes into a depth of theology and was willing to ask questions and was willing to be uncomfortable in singing about the fact that we don't have all the answers to it. To me, that was just a really profound thing, and that we rely on faith as opposed to the slappy happy kind of music and, Jesus, you're awesome and blah, 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 blah. But let's talk about our faith for real. The other one that was very influential for me was Michael W. Smith. Again, probably not a surprising choice, but and what was really unique about him is I saw his music grow and mature as he grew and matured in his faith too. And you could see the influence that people like Rich Mullins had on him as well. And a lot of his later music that came out in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s really explored that for me as well. And another one, which I posted a song about the first of what I hope will be a few videos here coming forward, was a group that was also influenced, like I said, it all comes back to him, Rich Mullins, was Caveman's Call. And this was a group of folks who were in their, at the time when they first formed, in their mid to late 20s, asking questions of faith, a lot of questions that a lot of people were having. And not only singing about them, but singing about the struggle of faith. And for me, now, as I think about it, music helps us to get through those times. And music helps us to get to the other side and to say that it's okay to just sing about these things, to be in the moment and be comfortable with the question and not necessarily having all the answers. And the further I get away from that music, the more frustrated and doubtful I find myself getting. And so I've been using this time which is it's a time of uncertainty, a time where we don't have a lot of answers, and a time where we can be frustrated. But as I've rediscovered some of the early music, but then also of going back into looking into newer music that's coming out, and finding a sense of solace and finding a sense of peace where we can be still, and I can, for lack of a better term, more clearly hear God's voice through the music. And so that's one of the things that I'm using to help stay grounded in there. So Kyle, Allie, I'm not sure, who your folks are or what you do, but I know music's obviously a big part of you guys' life as well.
A little bit,
Yeah, for you, Kyle, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I've said before, I've been a part of church music for my entire life. That's, that's what my family's done. My parents were big into it. I just grew up in it. So it's, um, and growing up in like the, late 80s and early 90s, my churches were very traditional. We had
Mm-hmm.
mostly the hymn book and a couple of choruses, things like that. And so when I got first introduced to like, the praise and worship music, the bit more contemporary stuff, I was like, I don't know about this. It took me a while to get used to,
Yeah.
but, I think it's so terribly appropriate almost that, we're finding ways to communicate with each other, by sharing or creating our own music and sharing it with others right
Yeah.
now. Not just because, it helps us communicate. Art is all about communication, saying, I have something to say and I want you all to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've been going through Lent and we're getting into Holy Week, it's so very appropriate because there's no greater time to be communicating, to be telling a story, the story even. And so I've been loving seeing everything that everyone's been doing and putting onto Facebook and Instagram and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because, that's kind of the central message from a lot of my, Christians friends and from us as a church and you guys as well has been, well, things are rough right now, so let's look back on what we, can really focus on.
Mm-hmm.
The one person, the one, the one thing that we can rely on, our God and our faith.
Yeah.
Anyway, to that, some of the people have been super influential with me, especially in probably about the past decade or so. As in the early 2000s, as the worship wars kind of died down and mostly churches stopped talking about contemporary versus traditional. They just said, let's, everyone do their own thing. Let's just stop arguing. There came about some people to the forefront who said, you know what? Yeah, let's stop arguing, but let's get back to making really good music that's for the congregation. Not just really good
Yeah.
Christian music for, like listening on the radio or having on the car or whatever, but music that's meant for the church to use. And those groups have been immensely important for me. The two that are always on the forefront of my mind is Keith and Kristen Getty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They very purposely, they say, what we're trying to do is make modern hymns.
Yeah.
And they do a great job with it. Some of the songs we've been singing, lately in Newburgh, that's from Keith and Kristen Getty. They do, and even now they've been putting out, I think it's every Tuesday, I think it is. They've been having hymn sings with their family during
Yeah.
this time, and it's a really, really neat time to get online and to sing along with some people, and of course their kids are really cute as well. But they're they've been really spearheading the movement. Another group is Sovereign Grace, which I absolutely love almost everything they put out. Some of their music has really influenced me, and their founder, Bob Coughlin, his book was really meaningful for me when I was going through college. And I started looking at, what is the real theology behind worship? his book Worship Matters really caught my eye and helped give me a good foundation. But a lot of their music is just amazing. Excuse me. Even like, because they
Getting all
are,
choked up now.
yeah, I know, that's it. They get really purposeful about even having like some of their songs have a liturgical element to it.
Right.
There's one, As We Go, which is a song of benediction. It's meant for the church to sing a benediction for itself. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful. But there's some other individual artists lately that have been catching my eye, like Matt Papa and Matt Boswell. I think it's those two that wrote one of my favorite new hymns, His Mercy is More, which lately I've not been able to get out of my head. It's not only is it a great tune, but just the chorus, His mercy is more, or praise the Lord, His mercy is more, it's stronger than darkness, it's new every morn. Our sins, they are many, but His mercy is more. I mean, for me, in this nebulous and difficult time, that has a lot of meaning to keep remembering, yes, it's not great. There's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of, tough times for everybody right now. But God's mercy is still more, and it's still greater, and it's still being renewed every day.
Yeah.
So those, I think, right now have been really, and most recently for me, have been most impactful on both, honestly, both my own personal faith as well as what I do as a director of music.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important that we continue to find those things, and that's those are the things that I continue to look for as well, and look to other folks now like yourself who are in tune to that stuff for new artists to continue to discover and help influence our faith going forward. So that's those are all great things. So Allie, how about yourself? Being of the millennial generation among us here, and the influences that you have.
Yeah. So growing up, I actually always was in like a church choir or school choir or something. So music kind of always became part of my. When I would go to like youth choir and stuff, I was really shy. Like I didn't want to sing at all in anything. And it wasn't my music director really pulled me out of that shell and like made me realize like there's a gift in music and a gift that like when you have it that you should use it. And it was through that like mentorship of Sarah Hazen, who Steve's also friends with.
Oh yeah.
It was like through that mentorship with her that like I gained a lot of like understanding in what does it mean to utilize music in worship. And through that, like I developed a lot of like skills and like this desire to want to figure out, do I also get to lead in worship as well? And so then it made me see a whole spectrum from also like the traditional setting, which is what I also grew up in, with a mix of what we would say contemporary music is as well. And I found so much value in both theologically, and it wasn't until like I started looking into like the meaning of songs, like why do we sing what we're singing, or where do those words come from, and what is it reflecting on, what story is it reflecting on, or sharing in a different way through scripture, essentially, like what are we saying. And so it's really fun, like the songs that we pick, and especially right now as I think of songs, like, okay, what am I going to record? What do I want to share right now? What is the message God's saying? And it's cool to like be able to look into songs and lyrics much deeper than just singing them on Sunday mornings. When we sing our hymnals, like there's much more meaning than the words that we're just saying to them. There's a story behind them, and so right now it's been fun to like slow down and think of those stories and to share them in ways that we can recording ourselves and maybe like giving a devotional, which is something I have been leaning into a lot right now. And though I get to post those out as a tool for or whoever's looking, I find them really cool for myself because I get a moment where I am also reflecting personally in those stories,
right,
and what God's saying. And there's so many artists that I like couldn't even narrow it down to one that I'm like totally listening to right now. But like something that I have had a lot of joy in doing is sharing with our Newberg students, because I've created like a Spotify playlist and we share music on that from what we've been using for worship on Sunday evenings, but also when a student's like, hey, have you heard this song? I'll add it to the playlist because then we get to share it with everyone. So it's fun to just see that grow and continue having that on replay throughout this time. Has been really, 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 really helpful, because there is a lot of meaning in music and comfort that I think we are finding in music that just kind of lets us set our minds at ease for a moment, especially in a time where it's not very easy to do that. So.
Exactly. I can remember a guy I first lived in the same dorm with me in college, and back in the day when we still used to have cassette tapes and CDs. I know some of you kids out there don't know what those are. Others remember even 8-tracks, but and I had my whole music collection, which included a spectrum of Christian music, heavy metal, and R&B and rap too, and all just sitting there. He was looking through. He says, "Dude, you have the weirdest taste in music," and that's. But I think it kind of sums up a lot of what we're talking about, and piggybacking off of what you said, Allie, there is that while there's a lot of, from a faith standpoint, there's those 3 artists that I mentioned that have had a tremendous impact on there. There's a lot of discussion around, which one is better. Kyle mentioned the worship wars that we used to have over contemporary versus traditional, et cetera, et cetera. And I've always been a both and guy rather than an either or guy.
Yeah, me too.
And I remember talking with another retired pastor who was insisting that, we need to sing out of the hymnal because that's where people pick up the theology of what we're trying to get across out of the hymns. And a lot of the classic hymns that we know, it's not only just music, but it's an attempt to set theology to music. But the other part is that we do have this deep need for relationship and connection, which we're all, because of our social distancing, we're feeling that right now. And I think that there's the music that came out in the 80s and even early 90s was probably a response to that, to say, okay, enough theology. What about how are we connecting with one another, and how are we connecting with God on that level? And the nice thing is that with those artists, and then a lot of what I've seen in Christian music, there's other stuff I don't like, but there's a lot of stuff that I've seen that is saying, well, why can't we do both? And I think that's the really important thing, is that music helps us connect sometimes on a head level that brings it to the heart, but sometimes we have to connect on a heart level that gets us to think about what it is that we're doing. And that's the beauty that our music can get in. Of course, none of us have the proper equipment right now to bring you a good musical rendering here at the end, but we hope to do it individually here when we get ourselves set up, and we'll look for those going forward. Definitely. But one of the things, again, like I said, Rich Mullins is artist that I found, and I thought this would be a good thing to end with, because one of his songs, which is really has a nice acoustic guitar piece, is called "Ready for the Storm." I used to actually know how to play it, but I've got to get back in the habit. If you watch my video earlier this week, I'm trying to get back into the habit, so I've got some work to do to get back to that there. But the song equates a sailor who's out and can see a storm that is coming, And he uses the image of being grounded to the lighthouse, of that a person of faith is going to run into storms, but we've got to keep our eyes on the light, which is God. The one verse that I thought stood out for me that I wanted to share was, it says, "The distance, it is no real friend, and time will take its time. And you will find that in the end, it brings you to me, this lonely sailor. And when you take me by the hand and you love me, Lord, you love me. And I should have realized I had no reason to be frightened. Oh, I'm ready for the storm. Yes, sir, ready. I'm ready for the storm. Ready for the storm." And we're alone. The distance is not our friend right now, not only for ourselves, which is why we're trying to connect this way, but we can distance ourselves from God. But we have to realize that there are several ways, whether it's meditation, whether it's through music or anything else, that can help us stay connected. And so my hope is that we can all stay connected, especially in this time together. And at least for the three of us, and maybe there's others out there as well, who can share in those musical gifts or musical talents, or even just by listening, if that's what you enjoy doing. Do that and share those things. We'd be happy to hear them about how we're connecting together and staying connected in faith through all that. So that's around the table for this week. Next week, we are not going to have around the table because on Sunday, it starts Holy Week. And so we're going to be doing, as best as we can, our Holy Week schedule. So we'll have our Palm Sunday service at 10 o'clock. The live stream will start at 9:45 this coming Sunday. And then at 7 p.m. on Maundy Thursday, we'll have our Maundy Thursday service that we had actually pre-recorded for you prior to the order going into effect. And then also our Good Friday Tenebrae service, which is a Tuesday service. And so we'll look forward to bringing those to you as well, and you can tune in and worship along. I do want to say a word about Maundy Thursday, that since we cannot celebrate communion together, we have an alternative liturgy that we're going to be using that involves a meal. So we want to invite you to prepare a meal or some sort of snack that you might have to help us share in more of a love feast aspect. And we'll share more about this week before Maundy Thursday comes about. So please join us in this time of Holy Week that's coming up as we get ready for that. And listen to music, as Kyle said, especially as the Holy Week is coming up. Let's meditate and let's reflect on the good things that God still gives us in the midst of all of this. Remember, stay safe, stay healthy, stay at home, and we'll look forward to seeing you throughout this week as we celebrate what Christ has done for us and what Christ continues to do for us. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Sunday.